Hi, my name is Jo Painter. Welcome to another edition of What's the Story here on the People Chronicles. I'm very excited to share this story with you in particular because Andrea reached out to us through the website, thepeoplechronicles.com, and you can do the same if you hear of or know about or are part of a story that you think should be shared. Andrea thought that. Andrea McHenry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for reaching out.
Thank you.
You got my attention.
Oh.
You said there's a nonprofit in Berks County, and it's called Free from HT, or Free from Human Trafficking, correct?
Yes, we are FREE, which stands for Freedom and Restoration for Everyone Enslaved, and we are a nonprofit organization out of Berks County that fights human trafficking.
A couple of things come to mind. I mean, we think about human trafficking, all you have to do is say that word, and you probably have an image of what that is. And I'm going to guess, and it's purely a guess, most of us don't think, whatever we think it is, that it's here in Berks County. Is that a fair statement?
Right. That would be a fair statement, Jo. When we think of human trafficking, there's two types of human trafficking. We have labor trafficking and sex trafficking. And sex trafficking and sexual exploitation is where our main focus is at FREE. But when we think of these things, we often think of overseas,
yes,
which we know human trafficking is very prevalent overseas, but it's also very prevalent in the United States. And it's not just girls being trafficked into the United States, but it's our own girls and youth that are being trafficked right within the United States. It's been recorded in all 50 states.
All right, I want to back up. You said youth. How young?
Yeah. 12 years old is the average age youth enter sex trafficking, the sex trafficking industry, so 12 years old, which is so young. I have a daughter who's 14, so I cannot fathom this. I cannot fathom anyone being trafficked, but our youth are at great risk of being trafficked.
How about our young boys?
Our young boys are being trafficked as well. Many times we think of just women and we think of just girls, but boys are trafficked as well. The majority of trafficking victims, statistics tell us, are women and girls, but boys absolutely are trafficked as well. Our runaway youth are at high risk of being trafficked. Within 48 hours,
within 48
hours, youth that are on the street are approached by a pimp, by a trafficker, within 48 hours.
Before we get into all of these statistics, and they're sobering.
They're sobering.
I mean, I can feel my heart going because and I have children, perhaps you do, maybe younger siblings, maybe nieces and nephews or grandchildren. So it goes right here.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. How did you get involved in this? What compelled you to become engaged in FREE, F-R-E-E, from HT, or human trafficking?
Yeah. FREE was founded in 2009 by Bob Morrison, and at that time I had just started volunteering with the organization. I was studying social work at Reading Area Community College, and I just found when we had to write papers, I just started to choose human trafficking.
Why? That's what I'm trying to find out. Why?
I'm not sure why I initially did. I just did some research, and I remember writing my first paper, and as I was writing, my heart rate would actually, it was exciting to me, and I don't mean that in happy about human trafficking, but it's just something that I knew was stirred in my heart. And then I found every time I had to write papers, it would always be about human trafficking. And I found FREE, and I started to volunteer, and I just knew, I was positive this is what I was called to do with my life, to be an advocate for those enslaved. And a couple years ago, Bob Morrison moved to Mexico for long-term missions with his family, and he handed the organization over to someone else. And I continued to volunteer throughout the years, and then about a year and a half ago, when that director was stepping down, I just knew I needed to take over and be director of the organization. Because without FREE, there isn't that organization in Berks County raising the awareness, and I could not let that happen. So I took over the organization a year and a half ago.
When you started at RAC and you were doing social work and you wrote this paper, as you said, and you felt your heart racing, was there an aha moment, a shock moment, something that you connected to that was the determining factor in saying, hey, this is my life's work?
Yeah, I think just researching all of the statistics, and I think that aha moment was when I realized this is not just something that happens overseas. This is happening in the United States. And this is happening to our girls and our boys and women. And to me, the more I read and the more facts that I found, it's, in my opinion, one of the worst crimes against humanity that's happening today. 27 million slaves worldwide today. So
it's a staggering number.
It's a staggering number.
So how did you realize, or when did you realize, hey, it's not just in the United States, which is sobering in and of itself, but it's here. It's in Berks County.
It's in Berks County. We do not have specific statistics in Berks County, unfortunately, but I remember reading, this was a few years ago, there was a man that had a human trafficking ring in the Reading area. And I remember reading it and thinking, it's really here. It's really here, and something needs to be done. These victims do not have a voice.
Right.
So we need to be their voice. So that's what we do. We be their voice.
I got to tell you, Angela, I didn't know that Free from HT, that's the website, is that correct?
freefromht.org.
I would encourage you to go there, because we can all be part of the solution here. I didn't know this organization existed for 7 years now, since 2009.
Yeah.
So what is it you do?
What we do is we are an advocacy group. We are all volunteers, so it's a small group of us, and we raise awareness. We educate the community. We equip, we empower, and we educate is what we say. So people can know what human trafficking is, can know the key signs and indicators. We give them the resources that they need to be able to spot it. There's a human trafficking resource number out of Polaris Project in Washington, D.C. It's a national number that you can call if you have a tip or if you see something suspicious. So we just really equip and empower our community to take action against it. And we do prevention work with youth. That's been a main focus for us, to prevent our youth from being trafficked.
How do we do that? Is there something you can share that we know so that we can help be part of the solution and prevent this?
Yeah. Well, as far as youth, are you asking? Well, we really look for people to make those connections for us. So not only do we call places and say, hey, can we come in to your youth group, to your class? We love for people to make those connections and say, hey, I'm going to make that connection. I'm going to contact my youth group and see if you can come in. I'm going to contact my class, my Girl Scout troop, my Boy Scout troop. So
you're engaging youth and equipping them with the knowledge to know, wow, that's dangerous, stay away, don't be duped.
Absolutely.
Okay. How about once you're duped? Okay, you're in.
Yeah.
You are being sex trafficked.
Yeah.
What are those signs that we might see as a community to maybe reach out and help that child?
Yeah. If you have a student, let's say, in your class.
Wait a minute. So you just gave me a whole different visual. So now there could be a student that's going to school every day and is being sex trafficked?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's a different picture. Okay.
Absolutely. There are youth that will go to school. I know of one particular person who went to school, after school was trafficked, and was then home later in the day. So when we think of sex trafficking, we cannot put it in a box and think it always looks like this. It is always going to look different for each individual.
Are there common signs, though, that we might spot so that perhaps we can reach out to that child?
Yes. If you see a tattoo all of a sudden, pimps and traffickers tend to tattoo their victims. So if you see a tattoo on a neck or an arm, something that wasn't there previously and is now there, a name, a barcode many times because they're considered property. That previous case that I was talking about in the Reading area, he had each one of the girls in his sex trafficking ring tattooed with a name. If you see a girl or a youth that's withdrawn, was outgoing but is now withdrawn, grades drop. If you see someone who was shy but now seems overly outgoing.
So behavior changes.
Behavioral changes, changes in cleanliness, marks, bruises. If you see a girl who is now coming into school or youth group with an expensive handbag or expensive shoes. The grooming process is what pimps and traffickers do to gain that girl's trust. So what they do in that time period is start giving them gifts, giving them things that they or their family may not be able to get for themselves. So it's a way to kind of pull them in slowly. So if you start to see, hey, she's got a lot of new clothes and a lot of new purses.
Some of the things you're describing have often been shared as these are behavior changes you might see and equate with drug use or drug abuse.
Yes.
So similar things like that. So perhaps we can't see a behavior change and go, oh, there might be drugs there. It could be any number of things. We shouldn't be quick to judge that.
Absolutely. It could be any number of things.
Typically, and I'm starting to think there's not a typical case necessarily, but typically these girls that you're talking about that are perhaps in school and then are trafficked after school and then going home, that's telling me, okay, they're going home to parents. Are parents perhaps missing the sign?
Parents can miss the signs, yes. And when we're talking about sex trafficking, pimps and traffickers will try to groom, and they will go after the girls that they believe are more vulnerable, meaning lower self-worth, lack of good identity of themselves. Already
parents aren't home necessarily?
Parents aren't home,
okay.
Absolutely. So it just may be something that's being missed. And again, some girls are abducted, so it always looks different.
Can you share briefly, maybe, I'm going to assume, and I know I should never do that, but in the past 7 years, beyond education, perhaps you were able to help one or two or more girls off the street without names, even ages. What does that story look like?
Unfortunately, for this area, we do not have a transitional home or shelter for women coming out of trafficking. We don't have the resources, so we don't see a lot of the stories of women coming out in this area because there's not really anything to come out to.
So you've never been able to get somebody to a shelter or to another place? We
have received calls where we've gotten, through the years, have been able to call other shelters as close of a distance as we can. So that's really what we can offer right now.
So what does that story look like without names? So it's Jane, and you had a call and you were able to reach out. So you brought maybe some closure or maybe the beginning of a new life or a new chapter for her. What does Jane's story look like?
Jane's story looks like getting to a transitional home where she can receive the counseling. When sex trafficking, it is a complex trauma.
What's she feeling at that point? Is she grateful? Is she scared?
She is scared. It is very hard to get victims to self-identify. So if you even have a victim that says, I'm a sex trafficking victim, that's a miracle in and of itself. So once a victim self-identifies, because they look at these people as their boyfriends, they will say, it's my boyfriend, they love me. I love them and they love me. So once they self-identify and they get to that shelter, then that starts the journey for them of really no longer becoming a victim but becoming a survivor.
That's hope and something we could all take a part in. I like I'm grateful. I want to say thank you for the work that you're doing, for sharing it here, because I think sex trafficking, human trafficking is one of those topics that it just doesn't feel good, so you don't talk about it. And that seems to lend an atmosphere to allow it to continue.
That's right. That's absolutely fair. What we have found is people, they just still have a hard time understanding that it's here. And I think it's out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Out of sight, out of mind.
So you're not letting that happen. You're putting a big old light on this.
That's right. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to continue to shine the light in that darkness.
Are there particular places that you go specifically, or is it just everywhere in general in Berks County?
We go everywhere in Berks County. Main focus for us is here in Reading. So just recently we had an outreach day where we went down Franklin Street in Reading, which we know is known to be a high prostitution area, and we know that 9 out of 10 prostitutes are actually sex trafficking victims. So we went down with toiletries and feminine products and are ready to hand them out as needed, and just really praying and just being a presence down there and building relationship. We're not going with the intent of rescuing anyone or putting anyone at risk of being hurt, because that's dangerous, but we're just going just to let them know we care.
And I guess the other angle is to always be aware everybody plays a part.
Absolutely.
So if you get rid of the demand,
That's the
you can
biggest.
put it out of so that it's girls aren't there because that's what they want to do.
That's right. That's not what they want to do. So it's changing that those
Mindset.
cultural mindsets.
Yep.
That this is they want to be there and this is what they want to be doing.
What do you need most?
What we need most is we need people to be involved. We want people to take ownership of this and say, we will not allow this in our communities any longer. That's what we really need, people to come together and say no more.
And it's in the suburbs as well as in Reading?
It is in the suburbs. It is in the country. It is everywhere. If anything, when you're talking about going into the suburbs, that's where girls are going to be brought. They're being brought where there's a lot of money, because that's who's paying for them, people with a lot of money. So
Wow.
it's everywhere.
This is sad,
It's
but
sad.
hopeful because we can all
hopeful.
play. So how do we get a hold of you, or how do we get in contact with Free From HT?
Yeah, we have a website, freefromht.org. On there, you can find all of our information. We have a Facebook page, all of our upcoming events, my email, my phone number. So everything's on there that you would need to know.
That's an easy one to remember.
Yeah.
freefromht.org.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? This actually is a story that's full of hope because we can all make a difference just by talking about it and no longer pretending it doesn't exist and knowing that it is in our own backyard. So let's put an end to it. Andrea, thank you very much for your work.
Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Want to know more about who's doing what in Berks County? Check out the stories on thepeoplechronicles.com.
These community stories are made possible in part by BCTV, Susie Ray Design, Queen City Family Restaurant, Lamar Advertising, Heidelberg Family Restaurant, Reading Air, Lions and Hole, Peanut Bar, and Kutztown University.